Okay.
Good afternoon. I'd like to call the board briefing meeting of today. What is today's date?
22nd.
Thank you. January 22nd to order. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We have several items on the agenda. I'm not going to read them. You all can read. The first item is board attorney evaluation instrument. We shall turn that over to Dr. McCullers. Good afternoon.
We have here the briefing of the current and what we believe to be the full version of the board attorney evaluation instrument. This is the first refit of this instrument we've had in a long time. It was it took some time. We had a big workshop about it and a robust conversation, and we now have an instrument that is similar in style to the one used for the superintendent. There are 4 performance areas and a couple of dozen specific indicators for performance. It's something we've gone through. I'd be happy to go through any detail with you or answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Ms. Morgan.
302. Legal performance under effective. It says legal issues are quickly identified. To me, it should be just legal issues are identified, period. I mean, that's the job. Quick, I don't understand. Quickly in there just means that then somebody has to discern what is quick to them versus somebody else.
How quick is it?
Yeah.
All right.
If I may, I kind of saw the progression between highly effective, effective, and needs improvement there, because highly effective means identifying legal issues before they become legal issues.
Right.
So there comes the potential piece. And then quickly identifying issues is sort of in between, usually identifies and proactively identifies. So I guess, I don't know what the word is in there, but I understood where you were going. So some of the word, does that make sense?
There needs to be a word.
I'm sorry?
I don't think there needs to be a word. They're just identified. The issues are identified. That's effective. Identified, defined, researched, analyzed, and acted upon. That's effective.
Okay.
To me.
Yes, Ms. Vaughn.
But if you change that one, then you might, if you look at the other one, the differentiation is usually identified, and then unsatisfactory, not identified in a timely manner. I guess it's just kind of shades of meaning there between effective, the average effective versus highly or needs improvement.
Yes, we were trying to get some sort of differentiation for each step, and sometimes it's time, sometimes it's quality,
Right.
And in this case,
there's not a lot of places to go
It's
except
difficult,
they're
right.
identified or they're not, and how quickly are they identified?
Ms. Gittens, did you have your hand up?
No, I was just saying that she did.
Oh, okay.
Excuse me.
Other board member comments?
It's not important.
Ms. Morgan?
It's not important enough to spend any time on. So.
or to strike this word or leave it or find a new one.
No, not find a new one.
I do have one quickie.
Leave it?
Yeah.
Ms. Gittens?
How different is this from the previous?
It's quite a bit different than the previous instrument, which was, and I'm not as familiar with that one. Mr. Dodig might be able to tell you, but it was a little bit more anecdotal and had a list of items. It was not in this format, and it wasn't scored numerically, I don't believe.
Mr. Dodig, did you want to address that?
Not really. I mean, I think some of you evaluated my predecessor with that instrument, so I was the staff attorney during that time. This, I believe, from my perspective, does provide more significant, for lack of a better word, substance than the previous instrument.
Can I provide a tiny bit of background why we did this? To me, the previous instrument was useless. It was a one-pager, and there were general categories, some of which applied to the board attorney's job, some of which did not. I think our goal in creating a new instrument for both the superintendent and the board attorney was to hold us as board members honest, make us honest in the sense that Whether I like Dr. Atkins or not, that doesn't impact my evaluation of his job. The other really big piece for me that it provided that I didn't have coming into this job was I didn't really know what their jobs were. And this provides not only a guide for me as a board member as to what I should expect from him, but it also provides for him a roadmap as to what he should be doing in terms of how he will be evaluated. So that's the background. Ms. Morgan, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I have more questions. So 2.04, partners. It makes sense to differentiate between coordinates with staff attorney, coordinates with administrators, and communicates with the public. Who are the partners? Are they the contracts that the board signs with other parties? I mean, I wasn't clear on.
In early drafts of this, we had a long list of potential partners, and these are people with whom we do business or have legal affairs between. So instead of stakeholders, including da-da-da-da-da, these are just people with whom the board attorney may need to interact.
Okay. And
Compromise word.
okay, fine, I'm not gonna. And then my really big problem, and it's not so much a problem, it's really a question of how are we going to do this? 1.03, pretty much all of stakeholder performance, 202, 205, and 303, all involve evidence. To me, require evidence. So, for example, in 103, advocates for board legislative platforms and priorities. How will we know? In 2.02, coordinates with staff attorney. How will we know? And then down to 204 again, communicates legal concepts to partners. How will we know these things? And then I think the last one, 205, when necessary, well, that's covered. 303, provides consultation advice on behalf of the board on litigation and other matters. So to me, these are, unless we're doing 360 evaluations where you're evaluated by your peers, by your subordinates, other district personnel, it's going to be really hard, I think, for us to discern. I mean, this is, So,
I mean, I can comment a little bit, like the last one, 3.03, I provide consultation and advice often to our third-party insurance adjuster on cases that are filed against the district. So without asking her, you wouldn't know. I agree with you. I provide advice occasionally to the superintendent and consultation on certain things. Without asking him, you wouldn't know. So that is the dilemma in evaluating an attorney. I totally understand that, and I'm all ears for how we want to make that easier. I can certainly, provide you the information or the names of individuals that I deal with and provide that type of consultation with on a daily or weekly basis. That's fine. I do. It's up to them whether they want to share the advice I give. I can't share the advice I give. So
I guess what I'm leading to is another question we've had conversations about before, and that is whether we should be doing 360 evaluations and start at some point in the administration doing that. And here's an opportunity to do it. I mean, this is fairly straightforward. You go to the people that you interact with, basically evaluate you on this, and we have that information made available to us.
I have no problem doing that.
Okay, well, I'm just throwing that out to the board, because we have had that conversation about doing 360.
Ms. Gittens?
I guess it kind of reminds me of the teacher evaluations that I went through, and depending on how conscientious you were, you would come with evidence of, what it is that you had done. And that kind of solved that. I mean, I agree the 360 would be good, but also there's an opportunity. You can say, we had the legislative event at Bonita, and you can put that you were involved in, blah, blah, blah. The only thing I am concerned about, look at 103, the first one, for example, provides consistent support and advocacy with positive results. I mean, positive is very like, we had a good lunch. I mean, what is positive and how do we define it? Is it too whatever? Because we can go to the legislators and do all the best we can, and then they still don't do what it is we're asking. So do you get dinged that we didn't get a positive result? That's what I'm wondering.
I think there's going to be some degree of, individual interpretation of what these things mean. We are human, and so, but I also think the distinction between highly effective and effective is necessary. So how do you say those? How do you say those two? I mean, it's one thing to just support, and it's another thing to get positive results, and positive results is really highly effective. How do I define positive results versus how do you? We're 7 different people, and therein lies the nightmare of his job,
Well, even if it was consistent support and advocacy, that affects the result or something, something like that. But I don't know. It gets into the weeds. But I don't know if do you, because I'm not familiar with the process, do you do your interpretation of it and we do ours and then we discuss?
Remember, I was appointed to this position in June, or July, so I haven't done an evaluation of myself as the board attorney. But as Ms. Morgan stated, I have no problem doing that. I think that's a good exercise, actually. And Dr. McCullers and I have had plenty of conversations about the instrument getting to this point. So I think we've gotten actually fairly far down the road. So if these are the only nuanced things, I'm kind of happy today.
Ms. Fisher, did you have your hand up?
I did at one point. So looking at 103, because that's the one that's being discussed now, at one period in time when I was the board legislative liaison, I had more opportunity to interact with the board attorney regarding those issues. And so from that perspective, I would say, oh, yeah, that was all great. On the other hand, I think that we get like quarterly reports about the litigation and all of that. And so I think we can kind of glean the success or failure of his work based on the outcome of a lot of those. So,
not to interrupt you, but keep in mind, those cases are typically being handled by counsel other than me. I'm
right.
just the person that organizes that and
Right.
makes sure that counsel's doing an appropriate job on those cases. So I'm not, I should say okay with what you're saying, but I don't want you to think that I'm in court handling those cases on behalf of the
Well, I
board.
know.
I'm not. So, in full disclosure.
but in part of contracting with them and working with them and reporting back to us is part of that.
Absolutely.
That part where
That's a
you're
big part of
keeping
the
us
function of my
informed.
job, yes.
So then, the other thing is, I think just our ongoing opportunity to ask you questions as we go and meet with him, frequently, I hope, that gives us another little more insight into it. And since this is his first time around, and some of our board members' first time around, I think it's still a work in progress, as has been the superintendent's evaluation form, so.
Ms. Morgan?
Yeah, and I would agree with Ms. Fisher. It really is a work in process. I'm just throwing these things out because they were thoughts that crossed my mind. I forgot to ask one other question. 105, board performance, enforces meeting protocols. Shouldn't that say enforces Robert's Rule of Order?
That's 1.04, the parliamentarian part.
Yes. it
Yes,
would be.
but then it's followed by enforces meeting protocols.
Yeah, I think I have the protocols here, your protocol, board protocols.
Do we really want the superintendent to enforce our
The board
protocols?
attorney.
I mean, I'm sorry, board attorney to enforce our protocols? I mean, that's what this
It's a
says.
good question. Yeah.
Not the
That's
point
his
of pluses
job.
and deltas?
Well, I'm just saying because it's in here.
Yeah. Aren't we supposed to enforce them ourselves? And hold each other accountable and ourselves accountable? That's a really good question, Ms. Fisher.
So those are the guidelines for us about how we conduct business. And I think it's incumbent on each and every one of us to do that individually.
Ms. Gittens?
But isn't it also, if we overlook something, for him to be able to remind us, you know, this protocol says this and says that? I mean, that's the way I read it, that he would
Yeah, I think the wording
remind us of,
maybe should be provides advice regarding
Yeah, enforces is
board
strong.
protocols.
oh, okay, I see the word,
Because
of course.
I've advised you numerous times here at the dais about your protocols, and it's up to you all to follow them.
And can I make a suggestion then, that we look at doing the process where he does an evaluation, a self-evaluation, and then and whatever follow-up materials or attachments that he wants to, and then it would give us a better insight as to how to evaluate him?
Yeah, so provide us with artifacts in the same way the superintendent does. Ms. Morgan?
Yeah, but there got to be limits. The problem we've had, particularly, I think, in Nancy Graham's time, where staff was burdened by the necessity to create documentation to support positions that she was, you know, putting forward in her evaluation. So, I mean, I think, you know, I like the idea, but I really do believe we have to have limitations on what we expect him to provide in terms of artifacts.
In the process, when we did it in the schools, it was really up to the individual. You know, you'd have some teachers coming in with their little red wagon of stuff, and seriously, and binders, and you'd get some
yeah.
people coming with a few papers, so it becomes
I've seen
your...
those red wagons.
You see, I told you, I wasn't lying.
Other constraints as a member of the bar, and I certainly can't roll in a red wagon with information that I've provided to one of you to show another one of you. So I'm appreciative of Ms. Morgan's sort of limitation there.
Ms. Fisher?
And so that's a good reason for our individual evaluation. And I believe in the past, a former board attorney provided us with like a little report, an update, listing the situations that he had dealt with and still maintained his confidentiality, et cetera. So, yeah, I think that limitations are necessary. I think we have a responsibility to call it as we see it. And I think for number 1.05, enforces is a strong word. Yeah.
All right, so am I hearing, Ms. Vaughn?
I had a question. Would the meeting protocols include when the attorney will say to somebody who's speaking, your time is up, or cautioning?
Parliamentarian.
I know.
That's parliamentary procedure.
That's 1.04.
Okay. That's what I was wanting to know.
So I'm hearing consensus that we would like personally, I think a self-evaluation is a step too far. Provide us with artifacts to show your performance in the various categories of concern. Am I hearing consensus for that? May I see consensus?
Say that again, you're saying no artifacts or
Yes,
artifacts?
provide us with artifacts, yes.
And no self-evaluation?
Self-evaluation is a step further than where I'd like to see him go. Self-evaluation to me is, you know, that's a conversation I'm going to have with him when I sit down with him and go over the evaluation. Where are you now? Where do we need to go? And how do we get there? That's my individual conversation with him. But artifacts are something that we can all digest and determine based on these categories where he is. That's where I stand on it. Do we have consensus for that? Excellent. Okay, and then do we also have consensus for removing the word enforces with consistently and respectfully advises the board regarding meeting protocols? Do I have consensus there?
Say the words again.
Consistently and respectfully advises the board regarding meeting protocols. I saw consensus there. May we're really low on time here. In fact, we're at the 20-minute mark, but I had some substantive questions with regard to items 1.02, 2.01, and 3.01. I'd like the word accuracy included in there.
Can you,
1.02
but I mean, in
says,
the,
Where accuracy?
in the
Where you want?
performance piece, where would you read it with it in there?
opinions and advice are always thorough, highly readable, accurate, and timely. Because opinions and advice do me no good if they're thorough, highly readable, and timely if they're not accurate.
So
Does that make sense?
thorough and accurate. It does, but our opinion's accurate. Anyway.
But, you're right, that's not.
Yes, I mean, if I ask for an interpretation of the statute and the board attorney provides me an inaccurate interpretation of the statute, then that is inaccurate. That is an inaccurate opinion. So accuracy, to me, is key for those three categories.
Well, then maybe instead of opinions, interpretations, because opinions makes it real personal. Like, I really hate this law, but, you know, we gotta do
But that's
it.
the point. That's exactly the point, is a legal opinion is not
Legal
based on
opinion.
my feelings. A legal opinion is based on the law.
Okay.
So if we can work accuracy into that, do I have, yes?
What about thorough, accurate, and timely? I mean,
Removing the,
Well, timely is number 4, is
Right.
4 and
Right. So
3,
Highly readable out.
yeah.
2.
I don't know, I've seen some opinions come down that didn't make sense to me, and I have a lot agree. So highly readable to me means he's putting it in language that we can understand.
Okay. Okay.
Do I see consensus on
Okay,
that?
wait, before you do that, okay, so if we put accurate there, which I favor, let's go across, what would you, where would you put inaccurate?
I'm pointing to Dr. McCullers, because Dr. McCullers will work on working that into the entire rubric.
Add accurate into 3 and 4 and leave it out of 1 and 2.
Yeah.
How's that?
Or semi-accurate?
Sometimes.
Read if you squint.
Quasi. Yeah, okay, so that's, yeah, I'd go with
Yes.
the accurate, then he's going to work out.
Just for him to wordsmith. Is that, do we have consensus?
That works, yes.
Yep.
Yes, Ms.
Yes.
Gittens? And- Yes. All right, and then 303. To me, the difference between exceeds and meets, my notes say is not acceptable, that's strong, but ethically and persuasively represents board with diligence, integrity, and dignity. Ethically and persuasively represents board with diligence and integrity. The only time integrity should not be in the rubric is the fourth, or the first category. What is that? Fails? Yeah. Fails to meet expectations. Integrity has got to be
All of them.
all of them except for fails.
And I would add, instead of dignity, professionalism,
Yep, that's fine.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I mean, that's what I read that
because
to
I
mean.
can
That's
think
fine.
I'm being dignified and I'm not.
Do we have consensus? Ms. Morgan? Okay, 3.04, how do we know we are protected with regard to content? I know I keep coming back to this question, but Bonita Springs High School, I'm sorry to bring it up, but I remember that this board approved a contract, and the content of that contract, there was no amount in the contract that we signed. How do I have any degree of confidence with regard to the content of the contracts that we're being bound to based on my understanding of your job right now, Mr. Dodig? We've had this conversation before. I still obviously am very uncomfortable with it. To me, 304 talks about form. And to content when applicable. Shouldn't content always be the most important thing?
Am I up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Form essentially is saying to the superintendent, the contract is legally sufficient for you to sign it.
Yeah.
Relative to the content, you have content subject matter experts throughout the district.
Yep.
So I don't know the content to use something that's before you today, of what should be in a math book.
Yep.
But if we were to contract with Pearson, I would review that contract for form to make sure it has the requisite legal requirements under Florida law to defend the board if in fact there was some type of litigation. But I cannot pass judgment on the content of that contract relative to what's in that math book. So that's what form means.
Okay, so we signed a contract with the construction company to build Bonita Springs High School, and we signed that contract before we had a price, right?
I wasn't involved in that, so I'm hearing you, and I have no reason to disagree with you. So, yeah, okay.
That was not the best thing for this board to do, right? It is not the best thing for a board to agree to have services provided to a school district without knowing the price of those services. That's not the best thing for us as a group to do. I think most of us can agree to that, right? No?
True.
You don't agree to that?
I agree.
And again, we have experts regarding the content. Yes. So, and I don't want to address that.
I'll let it go and I'll talk to him about it offline, but there were other hands up.
Yes.
Do you guys want to?
Ms. Morgan has.
No, if we're going to come back to it, I'm not going to comment at this time.
All right, 4.02, certification in education law is a baseline requirement. So I believe that needs to be worked into the rubric. I think the only time,
But that's in the requirement.
I'm sorry,
Isn't that in the job requirement?
it is in the job description, but it's not consistent throughout the rubric. It's only under exceeds expectations.
Oh, I
It
see.
should be in everything except fails.
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
Why wouldn't you just drop it? Since it's in the job requirement, why would it even need to be in the,
Well, if I just could, the job description minimum qualifications say certification in education law, which I have, or eligible for certification. So if it wasn't me, you might hire an attorney that doesn't have it yet, but they have to be at least eligible for it.
Right.
but then the question would be not, is that person certified, but are they working on their certification?
Right.
And that's what really needs to be.
To me, this evaluation is closely tied to the job description. Like,
Right.
this is our way of evaluating whether he's meeting the job description.
I know that, but then you've got to say, if you're going to put, including Florida bar certification, wouldn't you want to say under effective, that if you're not bar certified, that you are working towards bar certification? Okay.
So do we have consensus to ask Dr. McCullers to make a change in line with this discussion?
We're keeping it in 4, correct?
Right.
And in 3, we're going to add working towards?
Yes.
That credential, is that correct?
It would be somewhere in 402.
Either
but I'm
has
not-
or is working toward, and then maybe needs improvement is working toward, and
Okay.
failure is doesn't have. Is that fair? Okay. Any other questions? Yes. Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. McCullers. Thank you so much for all the work you did on this. I know it was one of the biggest nightmares of the end of your career.
Love it.
Project.
Do it.
Thank you, thank you. Next, we have evaluation of the superintendent and school board attorney, Dr. McCullers.
Well, hello again. This is just a sort of a, during the process of working on the evaluation, I conferred with Mr. Dodig about what this policy meant, and we both agreed what we thought it meant and what we thought it had always been understood to mean, but it occurred to us that people that didn't have experience with it might not. So we're suggesting a little clarifying language. And basically, what it is that this policy broadly refers to evaluations of both the superintendent and the board attorney, and then describes several requirements that apply to both of those people, and then adds at the very end a single requirement for an interim assessment that only applies to the superintendent. And we just are proposing this language not to change any meaning, but just to make it clear what it does mean.
Do I have questions or comments from the board?
Sounds good to me.
I will say that really timely. I appreciate both of you bringing this forward because we do need to be regularly evaluating our policies, and it helps to focus my work. So thank you for bringing this forward, and the clarifying language was really well done. Okay, seeing no comments or questions, thank you again, Dr. McCullers, for everything.
Thanks, Jeff.
Seriously, I mean, that was not easy. What you did was not easy.
He did it 5 times. Sorry, I think I lost track.
Quite all right. The next item on the agenda is policy 4.35. Dr. Creel and Ms. LaFountain.
Good afternoon. I'm back. I was here, you may recall, last time just to pre-brief you on policy 4.35, which is the Head Start eligibility, selection, recruitment, and enrollment criteria. So I'm just back in case there are any questions.
Cut and dry.
Step then is it will come for a public hearing next time at your next meeting. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have policy 5.26, professional standards, Dr. Pruitt and Mr. Brown.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Brown and I are here again just to see if you have any questions. We came before you to pre-brief, and now we're just back again to see if you have any questions.
Any questions, comments, concerns?
I feel like we just did this.
We did just do this.
We did just do this.
Pre-briefing, so now we're briefing.
Thank you, thank you. I think we're
Great
good.
job, thank you.
Thank you.
Little deja vu.
And next, we have policy 6.02 with Mr. Blurton and Ms. Letcher.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
All right, so before you is Board Policy 6.02, the school budget system. This is really just some housekeeping and working with Mr. Dodig to align the language with Florida statute, and including for our providing you updates to an amended budget. We do this on a monthly basis anyways. This is really just aligning the language with Florida statute. In our monthly meeting, board meetings, when we have our amended budget report, we do have an explanation for the report itself and the expenditures. So it is really just getting the language to align with Florida statute.
Ms. Gittens?
First of all, I applaud the full explanation piece. And initially it was 60 days, and now it is at the next board meeting. Is that sufficient time for you to do what all needs to be done in order to get back to us?
So the language only talks about when the function and objects are exceeded, so that's very rare when that might occur. And in that case, we could make sure that we got it to you in a timely fashion.
Okay.
Ms. Morgan?
Yeah, so, Mr. Dodig, would you please explain what full explanation means?
The language comes directly from House Bill 1279, which has to go into effect July 1st. That language is exactly what the legislature put in the bill. I suspect a full explanation would be more than simply a line item, but an explanation as to why, and Kelly, I'm wading into your world, why something exceeded the budget. And a full explanation, not just simply had to buy books. I mean, there has to be an explanation more substantive than that.
And so right now we do, right now we talked anything over $80,000. As you all know, any change that combination of changes over 80,000, and we give a full explanation of what that movement of funds were for. We would do the same in this and just let you know what created the negative and, what we were doing, what it was for.
Ms. Morgan?
Well, my question goes back to the meeting we had last Thursday. I mean, essentially, are we going to be going into the weeds on every single item over $80,000 to the point where we're asking for individual receipts? Is that a legitimate expectation under the statute?
I don't know, because I don't have an interpretation of the statute at this time, because it's brand-new language. It seems to me that the legislature was getting a bit in the weeds, requiring a full explanation. So, and I know there was some consternation from Mr. Blurton and Ms. Letcher about the language. I don't know yet whether or not.
Well, in our current process is when we do have the amended report, Kelly and the budget team present that to me. I review it, and immediately if there's anything that's concerning, to me, we have that discussion, and I discuss that with the superintendent as well too. For the most part, there is not that wild swings in the budget, but if there is, that is always brought to the attention of the superintendent and to the board. But I know where you're going.
One of the areas that I could see this happening is at the end of the year, when the final pays are done, because we do budget on average. If the salaries were higher than the average for that school or something, it might happen, and we would give a full explanation in that manner. And if that would be sufficient for you all, then that's what we would propose to do, is just explain the reasoning for it to go in the negative.
Ms. Gittens?
She had her hand.
I was just going to say a full explanation to me is just you letting us know exactly what it's for. If we need to have something further than that, something that we could ask for then.
That's right.
And basically, that's what I feel, full explanation. If you explain it and someone says, well, could you take it a step further, then, you do that.
Exactly.
And I'm reading, just so you know, from the staff analysis of the bill from Tallahassee, and it doesn't really explain the effect of the proposed changes. It simply says the bill requires district budget amendments to occur at the district school board's next scheduled public meeting. The district school board must also provide a full explanation of any budget amendments. It doesn't provide anything more than that.
And therein lies your dilemma. You get very little guidance in forming these policies, and because it's new, you have no opinions to rely on.
It's more of a dilemma for the folks that have to work in that world than it is for the lawyer. But I'd love to be able to tell them how to do it, if I could.
I think it becomes relative to the situation and the time. How much is needed and how much is not.
And also, we have protocols. If the board does try to get in the weeds, then we need to, as a board, decide whether we're requesting too much time from staff to go down a rabbit hole, or if this board is, as a whole, accepting of the explanation. Yeah. Right, true. Any other questions or comments? Fantastic, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Next, we have students' policies and procedures. Dr. Creel, Ms. Duncan, and Ms. Bowen. Or not.
Dr. Creel hasn't moved 3 times. Don't be scared. We won't hurt.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So at the last meeting, I presented our updates for special policies and procedures. So I'm just here to see if there are any additional questions.
Ms. Morgan?
Shame on me. I may have missed this the first time through. Plan for inclusive education. There are some deadlines put into the plan that have passed.
Ms. Morgan, what page?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Well, it's page 4 of 7, but it's the end of however many pages
Which
there were.
document, though?
This is the, oh, I'm sorry. Wait a minute.
Can't get it out.
Yeah, me either. I'm I'm waiting for it to come up.
Yeah, it's not loading.
Oh, a minute.
74 pages, something.
Yeah, I
There's a lot
know,
of pages.
Hold on a sec.
Why, theirs is not up either. It's not up either. I mean,
Huh? This isn't coming in.
It was like the 74 page.
Can they put it up here?
mine's frozen, it looks like.
There we go.
Mine's
Okay,
too.
wait a minute.
Yours frozen?
Anybody else is frozen?
Frozen too? Yeah, I'm frozen.
It's taking a long time.
Can they put it up on the screen or is that frozen too?
Mine's frozen too.
Mine's moving, it's just taking a long time.
Oh, there it goes. It started moving.
Mine's up.
What pages was that, 74?
149.
Oh, yeah, 100 something. Okay, I knew there was a lot.
Page?
So I'm going to have to go all the way, I think it's all the way at the end. Yeah. And let's see, it's page 145.
Thank you.
Is that it? Yeah. 145, 146.
Yep, I see where you are.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you see where it says, for example, on page 145, the second item, provide technical assistance in professional development on calculating time with peers, et cetera. It says the deadline for completion is October 18, and then under status, there's no update. Now, I know this really isn't intended to inform us. I know this is intended for the state, so I'm assuming that there's a gap here that I don't understand.
This is a 3-year document, so we are in an update year. So the state opens up certain sections of the document for us to update rather than the entire document. So the last time I presented all of our updates that were required. So each section of the update goes through DOE for review and any information prior to coming to the board. So we have updated every section they have open to us through DOE. And then next year we will be in a full review and they'll open the entire document.
Very much, that answers the question.
Any other questions? Comments? Thank you. Appreciate it. Next, we have instructional materials adoption. Ooh, Dr. Creel is gonna.
We knew we'd get you one time or another.
Ms. Houchin and Ms. Babor, how do I say that? Baber? Thank you.
Could I, while
Sorry.
we're kind of going through this quick transition here, just ask a quick question of the board? And tomorrow you have an accreditation meeting at the foundation. It was brought to my attention today that refreshments is a little bit of a matter of concern, so I'm just putting it out there to you. First of all, I don't think there was an expectation of serving lunch there at the foundation office, but I just wanted to make sure that piece was clear. Cassie had gone and put a small order into Panera for just kind of a continental thing. That can be canceled, but I thought I'd bring it up here and let them, so we could make a correction if that were the case. Because sometimes the food gets put out there, nobody eats it, or they eat a little bit, and I just wanted to get your opinion as we prepare for tomorrow.
I'm good with coffee and water.
I'll take care of myself. Thank you.
I can swing through Mickey D's.
Ms. Jordan?
Yeah, I'm fine too.
I'm fine.
We're on our own for
So
food.
we will cancel the order. Thank you.
Thank you.
And tea,
Coffee and tea.
right, maybe?
Okay.
Would that work for everybody?
Or water. I mean, I like to.
Yeah, water and coffee, something like that.
Got it. I think I understand. Thank you.
I just want to clarify, that's a training tomorrow you're all getting, not a meeting of the school board, so.
Right.
Fantastic. Hello.
Good afternoon.
And they're still coming.
Good afternoon, Board and Superintendent. Every year, we come before the board with our instructional materials adoption, and so every year the state has a new, last year was science, this year is math, next year is English language arts and reading. We start this process pretty early as legislation keeps changing and adding to the process. Having a hearing officer was new last year, and so it dictates that we begin pretty early in the process. So I'm going to let Candace Aliveto, our assistant director, talk through the process. As I know, we have new board members, some of which I do believe have been on textbook adoption before, however.
Good afternoon. So I'm very excited to be here to talk to you about our instructional materials for mathematics, as math is near and dear to my heart. So we follow the interest-based bargaining process, same way with negotiations, and just like we got to see you all do earlier with thumbs and reaching consensus, we do the same exact thing with our committee members. So this year we had 117 committee members that's comprised of community members, teachers, staff, administrators, and students. So last year was the very first year that we had students sit on the science textbook adoption, and this year we continued that on the middle school and high school math textbook adoption. As Lori said, we start that process very early. We began it this year in August, so it's amazing to think we're already here in January moving this forward since we started in August with meeting with our publishers. But one of the pieces that's very key to us is that we have our teachers' voice heard. So the teachers are instrumental in this, as well as our students, and making sure that it's meeting their needs in the classroom and the needs of our students. So we bring them in an evening training, and we go over what are their interests. Based upon our current math series, what is not being met, what are the needs that you have, and what are we looking for in our new adoption? Always starting with the standards in mind, but then going, what is it we have? So this year there were 6 interests that they had, and from there we had 7 priorities that we really look at, and then we break it down to indicators. So there were 20 indicators that when we got down to our final 3 textbook publishers we looked at, we really went through those 20 indicators and ranked them, and then had open conversations on it. That was all instrumental and led by Karen Baber, who is our coordinator for instructional materials and technology. But what we brought with us today is several of our committee members to really speak to you about the materials we're looking to adopt and bring before this board. So I'd like to start with Miss Amy Pappas. She is our elementary committee member, and we are recommending for elementary Pearson Envision Math, and she'll share with you some highlights.
Good afternoon.
So we were choosing Envision, or Pearson Envision, and the reason that that was the top choice was, first, it was a standards-based curriculum aligned to the MAFIS, which are our Florida State standards, and it also included the depth of knowledge expectations that we have here in Florida. In the past, our teachers have had to go out away from our textbook to find curriculum or resources that actually met Florida State standards and the rigor of our standards, and with Pearson, it's all there. Next, it had interdisciplinary connections. So there's a STEM project for every single module. I believe there were about 12 modules per grade level. And so each one of those modules comes with a STEM project to engage the students prior to starting that module. There were also assessment building capabilities. And there were varied types of assessments that teachers had access to, as well as we could customize assessments for ourselves. And that produced some great reporting features that then we could get information at the student level as well as the standard level. It really did a great job of conceptual understanding and building that conceptual understanding in math. Each lesson is designed with a 3-step process, the first being a problem-based learning section, where students are given a problem from which they pretty much don't have any math knowledge, and it's to build their connection and their prior knowledge, and that really is where conceptual understanding starts to develop. And then they go through like a visual learning piece, where then it's more of an animated section, which is going to kind of build on that problem-based learning, and then go into the lesson for the day. There's a guided practice section there as well, and in there the students have the opportunity to work on a whiteboard or their Chromebooks or any type of online access, and they have manipulatives there that they can use as well. But the neat thing about that is that the teachers have an app called Scout, where they can take a picture of the student thinking and the work that went into those problems, and then the teacher can reflect on that later as they're developing their instruction. It had great parent support videos to help our parents as well. We know some of these new Common Core standards are a little bit difficult for our parents, and them having that support there at home we thought was wonderful. It also had an abundance of digital resources. There are something called a 3-act task, math task for each module, and that brings real life situations into math. And the students are first given a real world problem to build their engagement. Next act, they're given a little bit more information, and the third act, it shows the solution. But the whole time the students are predicting and estimating what might happen. It also has PD videos available for each module for the teachers. So the teacher can watch a PD video prior to instructing that module to see kind of, how their instruction should go. It had offline access for our students as well, which we really liked. This would give our students the ability to work at home without having internet access, as the parents could utilize that as well. It has interactive games, literature, and the differentiation piece that went into this was really what we liked. The students can take a quick check at the end of the lesson. There are formative assessments they can take, and all of this information goes into their platform system, which then produces reports for the teachers down to the student level, down to the standard level. It will allow you to assign differentiated materials to those students based on their scores, and then give you more information back after they've moved through those modules. It really allowed the teachers to pinpoint gaps and holes and be able to prescribe information right there on site. It also had a multilingual section to it, so print came in both Spanish and English, but as well there was an online dictionary of math vocabulary in 17 different languages. So we would have access to that as well. Let's see. I think that was about all of our talking points that we had.
Great. Can we do questions by grade level? Would that be okay?
Sure.
Ms. Gittens?
Question I have, it says print and digital per student. So this, does that $89.97 mean that each student has access to a book and, it's okay, you can help her.
Yeah, the print and digital is for, it would be
a book and
the digital access per student.
Oh, okay. And you talked about being able to help the teachers assess where the students are in the standards. Will it take any of that work off of the teacher and, as you're assessing the information, then she gets a report, or he, that says this would be where so-and-so would be with the standard?
Absolutely, and it scores it even for the teacher. The teacher doesn't even necessarily have to score the assessment. They can take them on the platform. It will then take that data information, sort it, put the kids in groups based off their ability, assign work to them based off those abilities, and take a lot of the burden off the teacher there. Thank you, thank you. Yes.
For the primary grades,
yes.
Are they going to be working primarily out of print version?
I guess I will turn that to you as well.
Yes.
I would imagine that would be their comfort level for the most part, but I don't know if we're going to.
I know they're digital resources for the teachers, but I'm thinking in terms of what will they have on their tables or desks.
Yes.
They're doing. What grade do they get the Chromebooks when they're in to take home in 4th or 5th or not?
They don't get them to take home until 6th grade, but the majority of our schools are one-to-one starting in 4th grade. They just don't take them home with them. But the print changes based off of the grade level. So when you look at the materials, it looks very different for kindergarten than it does, for 4th or 5th grade.
And I think it sounds like a great
Had a special
resource. I was just curious because I know a lot of the younger kids work better from having the paper in their hand. And
They did, and they had a digital version program for K-2 as well. That just had
a supplement to the games or whatever. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments for K-5?
I just had a question. How do they, the support for the videos for the parents, how do you disseminate that information so that I mean, I'm still trying to correct my grandkids on how they're doing their math, and they keep telling me I'm wrong.
There's a, call that QR code? A QR code at the bottom of some of the homework pages. It's embedded right inside the materials as well. So as the student has their workbook and they're going through, there'll be an indicator right there on the page for the parent to connect into that video.
Parent cheat sheet, right?
And the same with the bilingual.
And
Perfect, thank you.
bilingual piece, sorry.
Any other questions or comments? Great, K-5
Well, thank you.
seems great, thank you.
All right, so next we are going to welcome Ms. Ann Campbell, and she is going to talk to us about middle school, and they are looking to adopt Carnegie Learning.
Hello. I'm here on behalf of the Middle School Textbook Adoption Committee, and just want to talk about a few things that stood out to our group. The first one was we love the fact that the instructional approach was based on 3 components. The first component was an engagement piece where kids can activate prior knowledge. It takes the concept, ties it back to a real-world example. The second piece was where the learning takes place. It's a development piece. It's based strongly on conceptual understanding, and it also gives opportunities for group and individual learning. And then the last piece was the demonstrate piece, where teachers are able to see what students actually know. And so some of the other aspects that tie into these 3 components, in the development piece, it really emphasizes inquiry-based learning. So the student's role in the learning process is emphasized, and the students they're encouraged to explore the material and ask questions. And the curriculum also provides some leading questions for the teacher. Another piece that we really liked was that the curriculum encouraged math discussion. So the teacher's not the one presenting all the material. The kids are involved. It's a two-way street. And it provided many opportunities for higher order thinking. And again, there's some questions that are provided for the teachers to help lead that discussion. We really liked the fact that it offered relevant real-world connections. And so because of the real-world connections, the students can take that knowledge and transfer it to other areas. And it also motivates their learning. And then there was also a video support piece for the teachers, and so that was very helpful for some of our first-year teachers, or could be helpful for some of our first-year teachers. And one of the things that we all really loved was there was a separate online component for differentiation. So in this piece, students that are struggling are offered additional support, and then students that have already maybe mastered the concept, it gives them more challenging questions. And it's adaptive. It's an adaptive learning path, so the teacher can see where the students are, who understands the concept and who doesn't.
Great. What is Edulastic?
Edulastic, that's part of the online component, where it provides practice questions for students, so the teachers can use that. And the questions in that program are fairly rigorous. So it's a useful piece that right now is a free resource, but I'm not sure how much longer it'll be free.
Ms. Morgan?
Can you give me an example of one of the problems that they solve that crosses over into the real world or into another subject? I'm just curious.
If you can't think of one, we will be bringing in the books for you. I have a whole cart for you guys that I'm going to bring in that you can then go through the actual textbooks and review all you want. So I don't know, Fan, you have something?
I actually had to develop a model classroom lesson recently, and I used we've been trying to use the new textbooks, or what we hope are the new textbooks, and there was one about scaling geometric figures. And so it talks about the conceptual piece of enlarging something or scaling it back, and then you actually take that and use it in a setting like with a map, or you may use it with, here's the scaled object, can you build the actual object, what will the dimensions be? So it did a great job with the conceptual piece.
No, I'm fine.
Oh, I thought you were
I'm just looking forward to receiving my book.
Great.
As you listen through to the pros of elementary and then the pros of middle, you can see how similar they are. And so it helps for an easy transition for those 5th graders moving up to 6th grade, that even though it's a different program, they're covering the same things and they're learning with the same strategies.
And as we transition to the high school, I'll just remind you that this is a resource, and it's a resource for standards-based instruction. So we're not taking away the opportunity for teachers to do that direct instruction or that blended learning. Instruction will be led by the teacher, but these are resources for our students to have. And what's really promising about this is the additional support that's provided to our teachers, is provided to our parents and our students all along the way.
Can I just say in that vein, Dr. Creel and her team were at DAC last week, and they presented differentiation, and I had a headache when you were done. But this actually is a really good piece. You think about a new teacher starting or the career changer, and the information that you brought last week to train them, it's like, oh, you know, this is a great resource to be able to tell them that they have, and it's simple and it's easy to help them to get over that gap. So it's good.
So next up is Miss Samantha Junkin, and she's going to go over Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. And we look at this as, we call it our AGA, and it spans actually middle school and high school. Since we have several of our middle school students who do accelerated work, they are taking Algebra 1. But for consistency, we adopt this at both middle school and high school. So she's going to talk about McGraw-Hill and what those teams saw as being the highlights of the material.
Hello. All right, so these are a few of the things that the committee agreed upon that were the best options for adopting this book. And one of the first ones was the support for first-year teachers and career changers. It lays out an easy step-by-step instruction and implementation for all learners. And it's easy for someone new to the subject area. So in high school, we tend to be specialists in our area. We get really, really good at teaching one area, and then all of a sudden next year, they're like, okay, you're going to teach Algebra 1 and not calculus. It really lays it out for someone that hasn't seen the material in a while, and they thought that was really necessary. The students are able to receive a consumable textbook, and they also get online adaptable practice, and they can do the practice problems without internet. So they can take it home, do it, and then once they connect again at school, it takes everything and it grades it for the teachers. And the teachers have that all on the reporting platform. The textbooks are colored. They thought that was a really cool thing to engage students. It's not the normal black and white consumable. It's easy for differentiation with ELL support, and it's easy implementation. There's an online support that is adaptable for students' learning path, so it helps all learners. If the student's doing really well or really low, it adapts their learning path as they go. It can be something that a teacher assigns to adapt it, or it can be something that the student takes throughout the year and it adjusts their learning path to fill those gaps that they have. Teachers are able to create word problems and adjust the customize the assessment so that the students are able to see consistent, rigorous problems, and that they're not all basic procedural problems where they're solving an algorithm. They're rigorous application problems, and that the measure meets the standard. So the teachers are able to get back a report that has it listed by standard so that they can see what areas that the students are struggling in, and that also goes to the student's learning path to where they'll be able to hit certain standards and cover those things again with their gaps of knowledge. Yeah, that's about it, sorry. I just have notes written all over my paper.
You did good.
You guys have any questions?
Questions, comments? No. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so our final committee member that's going to share is actually very special because he's also our community member. So Mr. Ken Weaver, if you would come and join us, he's going to talk to you about Math for College Readiness and pre-calc. And he was amazing to have on our committee because not only did he get to do pre-calculus, he also sat in on the elementary committee as well. So he literally got to see both ends of mathematics and hear the teachers' concerns and work through that process. So he's going to share with you some of their highlights as well.
And we shamelessly took advantage of his willingness to sit on both.
Yes. Well, you're a member of the curriculum committee, and you are absolutely passionate about the curriculum committee getting involved in what is happening in the school.
And let me begin there. Last year, as a member of the curriculum advisory committee, one of my very first meetings
a cart of books was wheeled into us for science and saying, please approve these for the board. And I was an educator for 41 years. You don't make me make choices like that without some preparation. I never walked into my classroom without having my lesson prepared. It may not always have stayed on that path, but I had something ready. I knew what I was going to do. And we were asked to approve these textbooks, and I was kind of taken aback, like, wait, how can I recommend something to somebody else that I've never seen before? So yes, I was very passionate about, okay, if there's an opportunity for me to take a look at the books ahead of time, I would love to do that. Little did I know I was going to spend half my life and should be put on the payroll. I mean, it got to the point where the security guard knew exactly who I was when I walked through the door. I'm not kidding. But anyway, math is a little out of my realm of expertise. I was a language major. I taught language. I taught ESL. So this was quite an eye-opener for me. Not that I wasn't a good math student, but at any rate. Math for College Readiness I've been charged with, and I just got my script as I walked through the door here today. Now, I was a member of this process, so I do know that what is written here was indeed discussed. But Math for College Readiness is a rather unique course in that some high schools it's treated very differently than it is in other. So picking the materials was a challenge for the group, but they did an outstanding job, and they picked the Pearson because of the elements that it contained for them as teachers as well as for kids. They found the materials to be very clean and readable, and that's really important, that the pages weren't cluttered, that they were easily handled by kids and teachers. There was a lot of spiraling review, so that there was always time to go back and take a look at what they had just done before they continued further. Real-world applications, that connection to life in general. Links to video support for test review questions. The standards, which obviously all instruction must gear itself toward, were very easily identified in these materials. There were PowerPoints available for each lesson for kids and teachers to follow up later. The neat part about this book were the online manipulatives. I, as an elementary principal, would go in and watch my kindergarten kids play with thick blocks and piece them together, but these were actually online, which is 2019, that's exactly what kids want to do, play online. Anyway, one of the beauties for me as a former ESL person is that there was great English language learner support in these materials. And a biggie for teachers, editable assessments, that they could alter and adjust assessments as they felt the need to meet the needs of their kids better. Any questions on Math for College Readiness?
Ms. Gittens.
First, thank you.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
Do you have friends? Can we clone you? Or? No, this is...
Well, when I retired, I kind of tucked my educational credentials in a filing cabinet drawer, and I thought this was a perfect opportunity for me to dust them off and come out of the woodwork and contribute to the district where I now live.
And your name again was?
Ken Weaver.
Ken Weaver. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Weaver.
Anyway, on to pre-calculus. Pre-calculus was a little easier than the Math for College Readiness because it's definitely a much more focused course in terms of each of the high schools that deliver this course. But some of the strengths of the program included, unit planning maps. Again, it was very standards-based. There was differentiation to meet all learners' needs. That there were ideas and suggestions for teachers to be able to help solve XYZ problem for a kid who was having difficulty. Wraparound teacher support for before, during, and after the lessons and the learning. Pre-chapter activities with vocabulary and quick checks for readiness. Presentation software. Usable online support. Okay, automatically adaptable software for personalized student learning, so that if Mary's having a trouble with XYZ concept, there was something there that could be adapted for her use individually. Lots of scaffolded questions, higher order thinking questions, additional examples, error analysis. If a student is having this difficulty, this is what you can do to help remediate that. Print and online support, access to editable assessments that can be saved. In other words, if they made a test, it didn't just disappear, they could use it again and again and again as they needed. Sketchpad, very similar to the online manipulatives where they can do the graphing online. Professional development activities, downloadable book that does not need online access, which is a definite plus for kids that don't have internet at home. And it was definitely stressed and found by the committee that these materials were not pre-calculus for the college level. They were designed for high school kids. So.
Great.
Questions, comments?
Thank you. Awesome explanation.
Yeah, I just had, out of curiosity, are the advanced classes using different texts, like when we get up to the calculus, pre-cal calculus levels? Like
Yes.
AP and those, they're using different.
Yes, they're using different materials. So, and this year we look at our enrollment in our courses and when we're adopting materials. So that's why you're going to see pre-calculus on here as one of our advanced courses that we do look to adopt materials for. It's one of our courses that holds the most enrollment for our students who are looking to take that advanced level mathematics, but they do use different materials.
Okay, that's out of curiosity, and all I can say is from when my first years of teaching, when the kids had a textbook and the teachers were handed this little thing that was about the size of a workbook, and there it was, here you go, 22-year-old, teach. These are incredible, especially for today's kids that are so involved with playing games and internet, and I mean,
Yep, yeah, precisely. Since I started teaching in 1973 till now, the materials that are available just so much better developed. And
still we're cranking out the things.
Yes, we were still using hand pencil sharpeners, that's for sure.
Ms. Giovanelli?
So I want to piggyback off of what Betsy just said. So IB as well, they would have different.
That's correct, and it's different for each, like IB, Cambridge, they generate money based on the passing of test scores, and they use that for training and for materials, and then each school gets instructional material monies as well, besides what we do with the state adoption every year.
Right.
So
All right,
that's how they stay current in their materials.
Thank you. And then, Mr. Weaver, I think we're hiring.
Yes, we are.
Come back out of retirement.
There are days, maybe once every blue moon, that I come back to full-time employment, but I enjoy retirement. Thank you very much, though.
Hold on. Well, no, well, I don't know if it's pertaining to Mr. Weaver, but I was just curious on the student numbers that we have in all of these. Are all those students included? Because I know you just said that some of them are.
They're the students that are enrolled in the courses.
Right now?
Right.
Currently, yes.
Okay.
And
thank you.
Ms. Gittens?
Just one more thing. The applications in the books and the digital part are so wonderful. Do we have the same type of capability for other subjects that are already in place? Where are we on that?
The ones we have adopted within the last couple of years will have the online piece also. Some of our older adoptions are lacking because of the change. And so as we adopt, we get better features and more access.
Okay, and one last thing that may come later. Dr. Creel, you had mentioned about the internet access boxes. And just for the record, can you talk to that?
Yes, you can't.
hopefully are going to be receiving some information today about reminding you about a Sprint, a 1 million project. And what that is we are partnering with Sprint for our high school students that do not have internet access at home to be able to have a device or a device that provides internet access for our students, only our high school students, to be able to have access to internet. We are working with our administrators and our social workers, our school social workers primarily, to help identify. There are certain criteria that students have to meet in order to be eligible for these devices, but Shelley Taylor, who is our graduation specialist, is heading up this project. We're working in collaboration with our technology information team and really making sure that we are meeting the needs of our students and giving them the access if they do not have access at home. We did have, just full disclosure, we did have at the very beginning a little trouble getting students to help self-identify for these devices, and that is when we started working with our school social workers in order to help identify these students and to call them in one-on-one to help them learn about the accessibility to this particular information. So we thank Sprint for their partnering with us in providing this access for our students.
If I may make one parting comment, as a member of the community and a former educator, I worked in a small school district in Pennsylvania. On a very good day, we had 2,300 kids total. Okay, so I'm amazed at what goes on in Lee County with 95,000 plus. But you need to know this textbook adoption process is just beyond imagination. The dedication and passionate teachers that were involved in this process just kind of blew me away, that they came to this job having pulled their staffs, having checked with fellow teachers, what is it we want, what materials do we need. The process is outstanding, outstanding. So congratulations, you've got a great staff.
Thank you.
Weaver.
As we talk about the individualization of our teachers coming to the table, I want to just remind you, you heard over and over today about the fact that not only are these materials online, but they are in print version. And so as we think about accommodations for our students and how to best meet the needs of our students, they do have access to whether they are a learner that best learns with online resources or whether it's through print resources. These materials will provide and accommodate their needs as well.
And that's a perfect segue into Karen. So if you notice on the screen, she's going to kind of walk you through estimate.
So this is a breakout of the estimated expenditures around this adoption, and this is for your information, and it is what the committee has recommended is print and digital for both, and we did get these numbers based on the current enrollment, and it can be subjected to change based on increased numbers and for next year and projections. And so that brings us into the material review process, and this review site is on our district website. There is a link. We have been completely transparent to the public, so we have been posting everything from the very beginning and documenting every step of the way. So the public has access to the materials to review digitally. As I said earlier, I will give a special cart of books for you so that you also can review the materials as well. And this site is going to be, it's been available since September, and it's going to remain available through the public hearing, the objection phase, and then the final hearing as well. Any questions?
Board members?
So I heard you say early on, thank you very much, this was a very good presentation, and I heard you say early on that this time, as with the science, students participated in the review committee. So I would just be curious about, like, what exactly was their participation and how valuable was their input?
They had full participation, so they were voting members, and so they involved themselves in all of the discussions. They had, I mean, Candace can also.
Yeah. So one of the things that we do with the committee members is if we were a team of 5, we can't stay together over the course of the 2 days from presentations to conversations. We mix our teams up about 4 different times. That way they're constantly engaging in new conversation. Not only do we do that with the adults, though, we do that with the students as well. So those students are embraced by other teachers, but their voice is also heard by other teachers. So they're no longer just sitting with their home school, they're sitting with other teachers across the district as well. And we had some very young middle schoolers this year who took some advanced courses, so they were really engaged. They asked some great questions. Some of their interests were different than their teachers' interests, so they raised some good conversation and points. So they were very active participants all the way through the process.
They ask a ton of questions, which keeps us on our toes, but it lets us see like what their interests are. But they also, on the other flip side of that, they get to understand what's important to teachers and why it's important to teachers.
So the reason I asked that question is because we have been involved with our School Board Student Advisory Committee for the past several years, and it's been a tremendous learning experience both ways, both for the students and the staff, and they have literally come up with ideas and ideas for projects and strategies that we all didn't think of, and so they have been so valuable in helping us, moving forward and making decisions, and have given ideas to our different departments who have come to present. So I was just curious to see how that worked, but I thought it would be a good experience. Thank you.
Yeah, we definitely value their input, and we also value our community members as well, because as you can see with Mr. Weaver, he brings a multitude of experience with him, so.
Yes.
Jordan? I was just curious, where do you get the students from?
So it's an application process. So we open up the applications. Principals recommend names for both their teachers and their students, and we try to make sure that we are covering all of our bases, east, west, south zones, and looking at 6th, 7th, 8th grade, who are they representing. But we also make sure that the principal is okay with them being out of school for 2 days, and parents are okay with them being out of school for 2 days, because we do require them to come to the evening training to talk about their interests, but also being out of school for those 2 days. So we do go through that entire process as well of making sure all parties are in agreement and that their principals have recommended them.
Thank you. Ms. Morgan?
Yeah, so this is a little bit off topic, but I am curious. You've talked at all 3 levels about the ability to identify what standards are being met, what students are struggling with what part of the standards, how you remediate. How does that aggregate up to the district level when Ms. Taylor, Shelley is working on progression grade to grade? How does that fit in with some of the work you're doing? Does it?
Yes, it absolutely does. So that's one of the best pieces of this past year. We're really trying to align all of our systems. So with the creation of instructional guides and putting resources out there for teachers and making sure we know what standards, we're also tying that back with Shelley in graduation, going, so what is it, what courses do they still need to take in order to be a graduate? And that's where Math for College Readiness sometimes comes in. And what are those concordant scores? If they're not able to pass our algebra EOC, they need PERT. Okay, that's going to be in our Math for College Readiness courses. What does that curriculum map look like? What does that instructional guide work with? And then it's all parties working together to make sure our systems are aligned to give that student the best opportunity and possibility at graduation.
Thank you.
That goes all. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say that goes all the way down to elementary. So, in fact, we sat with our coordinators this morning and had one-on-ones for mid-year, for moving forward, or different things that we needed to adjust. And I was in all of the secondary, and she's in all of the elementary, as well as the coordinator, so that we can make sure that we're building all the way from kindergarten. What is it that we need to build in 5th grade that they're missing in 6th grade, or how can we help to move that along? In 3rd, 4th, and 5th, we just, when we met with principals last week, we built boot camps, if you will, just in time, based off of the standards. So, okay, these students are 3rd, 4th, and 5th. they haven't met this standard, what can you do to back it up so they're in 5th grade? And this is part of what Ms. Gittens heard in the DAC meeting the other day when we talked about how we differentiate, that we differentiate based off of the standard. So the standards go all the way through 12th grade. And so how do we back those up so that if you're in 10th grade, you're on a 6th grade, or you're in 5th grade, you're on a 3rd grade? And so that goes all the way down. And we've been building those for 3rd, 4th, and 5th. So hopefully, when they get up to middle school, when they get up to high school, we've started to fill those holes early.
So what I heard today and what I saw in the backup material was further breakdown of silos and better working together between and amongst departments, because there was a lot of talk about focus on first-year teachers and providing them with the ability to hit the ground running. Also, information systems, IS. I keep going back to Dwayne's video, but a lot of what he talked about was reflected in today's conversation with individualizing instruction and differentiating based on the tools that are available to us. I'm wondering whether, Superintendent Atkins, can I put Mr. Davis on the spot a little bit? He talked in Finance Advisory about some negotiating strategies that you're using with regard to textbook adoption. Do you feel comfortable addressing that, or is that for another time?
For another time.
Okay. All right, let's do that another time. Are there any other, oh, wait a minute, I wanted to talk to Mr. Weaver. You said pre-calc was easy. I followed you all the way up until you said that, and then you lost me. Mr. Weaver, you're awesome, and what you said truly reflects my experience. When I was on a textbook adoption committee, the passion of these teachers and the staff to truly adopt materials that are best for their students really is astounding. And you're right, I think our process here is top-notch. So thank you, sir, for your service. Any other questions or?
Did just want to kind of tell you the next steps, and that's going to be the public hearing will be I'm going to post that tomorrow for their 20 days out. And then we're going to have the objection form that we'll post after the board meeting, where let's hope you adopt. And we'll have the objection form posted, and that's going to be posted for 30 days. If we have no objections, like we did last year, knock on wood, we will close out the objection form after that 30 days, and we'll be good, and we can go get a final approval for purchase. If for some reason we do have objections, we will have a hearing officer that will hear those objections. We'll have responses to those objections from our publishers to support and rebuttal those objections, and that hearing officer will then have that information to give you a final report on his recommendations, and then we'll go from there. Okay? Great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. Next, we have fiscal year 18 audit and comprehensive annual financial report. Mr. Blurton, Mr. Santiago, and Mr. Wolf.
Yeah, I'm freezing too. I'm freezing too.
Absolutely, but I'm not complaining anymore. There's nothing I can do to change it, so I'm not complaining about it.
I'll take over from you.
Yeah, we are.
I'm about ready to put some tape.
You gotta tell that guy right there. Tell him.
I said, I'm about ready to
right
put some
there.
tape on the vents.
Tell him it wasn't me this time.
It wasn't.
Take care of it.
Oh, he's calling.
No, it was the rest of us this time.
Hello again. It's not deja vu.
We have to stop meeting like this.
All right. And I think Mr. Weaver just walked out. He said once in a blue moon. Well, there was a blood wolf moon.
Yes. There was.
Maybe. And speaking of Wolf, I would like to introduce Mr. Jeff Wolf. He is the audit manager. You like that, don't you?
That was good.
Okay, because our subject is another one of those subjects. You know, it's the wonderful world of finance that we love. But Jeff is the audit manager and has been working in doing the audits in the district's financial position. He is from the audit firm of Moore, Stevenson, Lovelace. And also with him to present is Mark Santiago. I believe most of you know Mark. He's our Director of Financial Services, so oversees accounts payable, accounting, and property records. And so this is on an annual basis. We have our annual financial report, and they provide the audit and as part of that is the comprehensive annual financial report. So as per their service and what is required is they will present their audit, if there are any findings, just how the audit went, and give you the key points, and then any questions that you may have. Sound good?
Sounds
so
good.
Without further ado, I will go ahead and turn this over to Mr. Wolf and Mr. Santiago.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to thank the board for allowing us to serve you as your external auditors. Just a kind of quick overview and just some required communications that standards require us to communicate to the board. First, our responsibilities under the audit is to perform an audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, governmental auditing standards, Florida Auditor General, and also the uniform guidance, which is your single audit standards. And we're also responsible of giving an opinion on the fairness of the financial statements. Management is responsible for preparing the financial statements and also establishing an internal control system that would give reasonable assurance that there is no material misstatements in the financial statements. And they're also responsible for making all decisions related to the audit. We also do perform review of the district's internal controls and compliance as relates to financial reporting. It's for us to gain an understanding of the controls, but we do not issue opinion on those controls. I'm happy to report that there was no misstatements in the financial statements or no uncorrected misstatements, and also we had no disagreements with management. At the end of the audit, management did provide certain representations in a letter to us, and we are pleased to report that we completed the audit in the time schedule that was communicated to you in our July letter. To our deliverables, on page 13 and 15 of the financial state of the CAFR is our auditor's report, which contained an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion, the best opinion that you can have. Our next report is our report on internal control on financial reporting and compliance. Again, no findings on internal control or compliance. Our next report is our report on compliance with each major federal program, your grants. Again, it's kind of this similar theme, no findings or compliance issues. Our next report is the management letter. We had no management letter comments in that report. And lastly is our report on investment compliance, and again, no findings. So overall, there was no compliance issues noted in your fiscal year 18 audit. Some brief financial highlights. Your net position data, which is really, if the district was a business, this includes all your long-term capital assets and also your long-term liabilities. Pretty comparable to last year. I mean, you'll see your net position dropped a little bit, but the important, I think, ratio in this slide is your current ratio. Although it dropped from last year, you know, it's still a pretty strong 4.0, which really shows you the district's ability to pay its current liabilities using current assets. The higher the number, the better. Here's just a breakdown of that net position. You may see the deficit in unrestricted net position. This is pretty common in school districts. This is due to a few years ago recording your net pension liability, and also in the current year you had to record your other post-employment liabilities. So that is really what generates that unrestricted net deficit and is really out of control of the district. Just a summary of your total revenues and expenses, and then your change in net position. And again, it's really the change was really due to an increase in your net pension liability and also recording that full other post-employment liability. In prior years, you're only required to record just a portion of it. This year, a new standard required you to record all of it. So that's really the difference for that change. This slide really is your general fund, which is probably what you're more accustomed to seeing. It's your main operating fund of the district. Your numbers were pretty consistent with prior year. And overall, you ended up with $87.1 million in unassigned fund balance, and that's really what is available to meet your ongoing expenditures in the following year. And this is just a summary of your total revenues and expenses. Your net change in fund balance did increase by $10 million, but that was really just, I think, a budgeted spend down. And really the key takeaway from this slide is that your assigned and unassigned fund balance is 12% of your total expenditures and about 12% of your total revenues. And I did a comparison with the 15 largest school districts in the state, and Lee County was second of that group. So that's you're doing pretty well with your peer group. So it really shows fiscal responsibility and that flexibility to meet any unexpected needs that the future may bring. But at that point, I'll ask if there's any questions on the CAFR or the audit.
I have one quick one. Can you give us the Cliff Notes version of restricted and non-restricted or unrestricted? You mentioned it in under net deposit detail in millions.
Your restricted fund balance is your remaining funds that are restricted by legislator. It's
Categorical fund, like we discussed earlier this morning.
Okay. That's it.
And your unrestricted, which is a deficit, would normally be your funds that are available to use at the discretion of the district.
Ms. Jordan? Oh, no, nothing.
Nothing, no.
No, that was, we just, yeah.
And so the data that Jeff provided regarding comparison to the largest 15 districts, the largest is still Orange County. And even with that, so we are right around the 12% that Jeff had mentioned. That is where we are, and is part of the strategy that we discussed earlier as well too.
I'd like to say congratulations to staff on your recognition for your auditing practices, or your bookkeeping and your transparency in that regard. I want to recognize you for that. And have any questions or comments from the rest of the board? I think we're good.
Thank you. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much, and thank you to staff. It's a lot of work. We all do a lot of work in every department, but it's good. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Mr. Blurton staying put. I see Ms. Millay coming up.
He moved down a chair. Oh, no, he didn't. He
for an IAQ bid update.
I'm giving Dr. McCullers a run for his money today.
He's happy over there.
No, so everyone knows Susan Millay, Executive Director of Financial Services. And as per the board workshop that we had last Thursday, we're here just to provide an update regarding the indoor quality bid that we had started the discussion in the workshop, just to provide you, where we are since Thursday, and any additional questions. And I believe Dr. Atkins also is part of this panel, but from the other side over there as well. So. Well, actually, Susan is right in it, so I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, board members and Dr. Atkins. Following up on our discussion on Thursday, the actions that we're taking at this time are to proceed with procuring indoor air quality services under an emergency purchase approach, which is authorized by school board policy. And until we are ready to take action and move forward as we continue our due diligence and the recommendation that was previously brought before the board, that's the action that we'll be taking at this time. And in the future, when we have a little bit more information, we'll bring back a recommendation to the board upon the superintendent's approval.
Do you anticipate any length of time or whatever that this should take that will be an emergency status?
I'm not, I can't give you an answer to the length of time. I think that other departments are managing that initiative and will receive updates from them.
As it relates to the inquiry, that's still, the due process is in process, and a lot of information is being gathered and reviewed as we speak, and so it is best for us as the district, for all concerned, that we follow that due process to conclusion, and at that point, we will have some real definitive options before us to present to you on where we need to go, but urgency, there is a sense of urgency, absolutely.
So just having received a little bit of an update today relative to that other department, I think things are proceeding quite well and quite, expeditiously. So I do believe that we will have that wrapped up in the very, very near future. So I'm happy to report that. In addition to that, I know that Ms. Millay provided a couple invoices, which was a board member request from the workshop. So I did have Ms. Sanders put that out to board members today. You should have received that. There has been an additional request made from a board member, so I think we're in the process of I just was made aware of that this morning, so I asked Ms. Millay and her team to evaluate that and let me know, and I'll make sure you all know about that as soon as I learn additional information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Vaughn.
To follow up from the workshop, since Dr. Atkins brought it up, one of the topics that we touched on was cost analysis. And at some point, will you be able to supply that? You said
we can, and I will tell you also, the main reason that we do not do those services wholly in-house is due to the liability. The liability involved of us making a wrong call or not remediating appropriately, the cost to the district would be very exorbitant.
Okay, and yeah, you didn't say that last week. Last week you said you had done a cost analysis, and
that's part of it, and so that's more information for you. Yes.
Okay.
So
yeah,
I apologize.
If I could see some of that in black and white spelled out, that would be really helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? I want to thank you, Ms. Vaughn, for bringing forward the timing issue. And just, as I said last week, each new member of this board is going to bring a new strength. I hadn't seen it from that perspective before, and I think staff has committed to getting these items to us at least a month before we have to vote, or a month-ish before we have to vote on them. So if we have questions, we have that time. So I just want to thank you for bringing that up, because I think that will serve us well.
Yeah, thank you. And I talked to Ms. Millay actually after that, and yeah, she had committed to that. So I think that's a good movement. And, as I said, the best laid plans of mice and men, you just never know. So, yeah, I think that's
great. I think we're in good shape.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone who would like to address the board public comment? Seeing none, move on to board member comments. Ms. Jordan, why don't you go first today?
I have no comments.
You have
It's been
no
a long day.
comments. Ms. Gittens?
I would like to bring up one thing. I spoke with staff this morning after we did our workshop in room A and B, and just to kind of get their idea of having all of our meetings in this venue. And I know that one of the issues that the board members were talking about was the intimacy of being able to see each other and all of that. In talking with them as far as being able to, number one, have all of the meetings televised, and they talked about having the tables set up as we do in A and B, but have them in the pit. And actually for them, and we can, ask them to discuss that, but that it's easier for them to set it up here than it is to set it up over in another room. To me, it would serve two purposes: to help their situation, everything would be here. We're talking about transparency. Everything would be, we'd be able to be live on everything, on each meeting. And, you know, we can ask them to give us comments or feedback on it. But I just think if we did that, it would be more central. Everything would be in one place. Even the plus and delta in the back room would be simple. We'd be, you know, right here for it. So I don't know how I put that forward and for discussion to see if anyone else is in agreement or would like to move forward with something like that. I'd just like to put it out there.
Ms. Morgan?
Dr. Atkins, has anybody worked on an estimate of what it would cost to create a media space for us where we could work?
They're in the process of working on that, yes.
Thank you. Then I'll have no opinion until I know what the numbers are.
And can you explain that, because I'm not sure.
Yeah, what we're talking about there, I think this came out of discussions with board members relative to making sure that we have areas that we can live stream and we're doing workshops. So it's similar to what we have over there on Canal Street, except with updated technology. We could outfit like Training Room D or Training Room A and B with that type of technology so that the board could go in there and have a workshop and you'd have the ability to put it out there. That's what we're looking into right now, and I'm going to bring those numbers back to the board for their consideration.
In the interim, could we even consider just doing everything here? I mean, they have to set up the room over there. They set it up here, and actually they said it's easier for them to set it up here.
From a staff perspective, you know, that it's easier for us to do it here, so that's something that, again, the prerogative of the board.
Well, part of the thing is too, I had several people say that we, especially, I know the Caloosahatchee room was a different situation, but that people in the audience really can't hear unless we mic, you know, our conversations, and then that's another layer of adding something else to their setup. So.
Right, and with the Caloosahatchee room last week, there was some difficulty with people in the back of the room being able to hear everything that was said.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Morgan?
I was just, it's our meeting. And I'm not certain whether the elevated level of difficulty for staff is really an issue when it's our meeting. This is our time to work together. It has proven to be our most productive time working as a team. I just find it really hard to converse with Mary at that end of the table as opposed to sitting next to me when we're trying to go around that, you know, I
don't think that that's what Ms. Gittens is suggesting. I think she's suggesting setting up the tables in the pit.
Oh, in the pit? Oh,
Yes.
yes. Fine.
Yes, that's what I was saying.
I don't know if we have enough space down there.
I mean, it's been done before.
Yeah.
For other
No doubt,
issues,
as long as we don't lose the interpersonal.
Right.
Make the tables close.
We did make some improvements to this room so that we could make that easier to do it down in the pit.
And I'm not going to mention the temperature, but if I were to mention the temperature, we would make sure that it's nice and warm in here as it is over there, right?
Correct.
But I'm not going to mention that. Do we have consensus? Thumbs up?
That's fine.
Fantastic.
If they can put the tables on.
Ms. Gittens, do you have?
I do want to mention, I could mention it later, but on Saturday morning, thanks to Ms. Giovanelli bugging me about going out to FGCU, I went to the science fair that they had out there, and I was just amazed. I had a blast. I'm looking for mung beans so that I can grow them in vinegar and eggshell water because it's high in calcium. But I learned so much, and it was really just neat just to listen to the kids to talk about their projects and the pride that they had. And I just learned a lot about what's going on in our schools as well. It was really great.
Awesome. Ms. Giovanelli?
Well, I'll just piggyback off that. So I was a judge at the Inventors Fair, and that was excellent, and I would challenge each of you to be a judge next year if you can, because they need judges. And I'll do it again, even though it probably about killed me to be up at 7:15 or be there at 7:15, just for the record. And as y'all know me, I'm not a morning person, so, but I enjoyed it immensely. That's really all I have.
I was across the parking lot on the pool deck, watching a swim meet that morning.
I saw them going in, so, and they were selling bathing suits later, too.
Yeah, I know, they're very expensive bathing suits.
I saw a child running across the parking lot in bare feet and a towel.
Yeah, that's what they do.
Okay. It was cold.
Were those your comments?
Yeah, I'm finished, thank you.
Ms. Vaughn?
I mentioned it this morning at the workshop. I think that it's very, very productive to have workshops on a regular basis, because it gives us an opportunity to actually talk with each other and, in some cases, I'm just going to say, hammer out some of the differences. And I think that it's way better to hammer them out, get it all out there, instead of, letting things kind of percolate, let's say. So I'm looking forward to having more workshops where we can do exactly that. And other than that, I know all of us were at the Unity Breakfast yesterday, which a great breakfast, and nice seeing all the members of the community, and I always look forward to going to various community events, and that's it.
Great. Ms. Fisher?
So, yes, just if you bear with me 1 second. First of all, I want to say, there are always so many amazing things going on in all the schools, and traveling around, I never cease to be amazed at how hardworking our teachers are and how productive and innovative our kids are. So, and along the lines of workshopping and hammering things out, I had 2 phone calls yesterday. One from Peter Denui from the African Network, and one from Reverend Suarez, both who are community leaders. And so they wanted to ask me to bring a message saying that they had recent meetings of their own, and that they were expressing some concern about the state of the school board, based on news press editorials, et cetera. So I tried to explain that, we are in the process of transition, and they asked that they don't want to worry about their children thinking that we're distracted from our purpose by any kind of discussion about our diversity. And I just want to editorialize a little bit myself and say that one of the things that I have learned over the last 8 years is that the diversity on the board is part of the strength of the board, and that we all bring, different perspectives and different strengths and different experiences, and that in the long run is really what enables us to make decisions that represent our constituents. And they both reminded me that we were elected by the people to represent them because they had confidence in us, and that they don't want to be worried about having to lose that. So I said I would send the message. And Reverend Suarez mentioned that since we did have the half-penny sales tax, that he felt that we would be having an opportunity to do more of what we need to accommodate our growth and have the resources we need for the students. So we talked a little bit about that and said that that's not the end-all be-all, but it's going to be a big help, and that the rest of the work that is being done to identify other resources and to become more effective and efficient in the long run is going to benefit their kids. So I just wanted to share that in as tactful a manner as I could, so that you could be aware that there, is a little bit of concern. And I think that we, need to put any fears of our community at rest. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan.
I have no comments.
I just have a couple quick ones. I was at Lehigh Senior High School this morning for the Avid Showcase, and I have to wonder when and if Principal Corey sleeps. She's really unbelievable in terms of the culture that she's created over at that school, and her understanding of the community that she serves. I was really impressed. And the other thing sort of goes back to back with what you were talking about, Ms. Fisher, which is I felt a difference at this table today. All three of the tables we've sat at so far today. I don't feel the tension that was there last week, and I think we're well on our way to being a functioning team, and I hope that we continue to, as Ms. Vaughn said, hammer it out in a respectful manner, and gel together as a team, because I think that if we don't behave, then we're not fulfilling our responsibilities to the community. So kudos to everybody for that. Did I see a comment? Yeah?
Yes, I just have one comment on that. That kind of lends itself to why I asked about televising as we're doing our workshops. This morning, not 20 minutes after the workshop, I got a phone call about, I heard from the news that we need to be there at 6 o'clock because something is going to happen. I said, no. I said, if you watch the workshop, you will see that we discussed various issues. We came to some conclusions on some, and we brought other issues up. And I think that's one of the things, that transparency piece of having them see it firsthand. Because, like I continue to say, if people don't know something, they make it up. And by the time they make it up, it's pretty bad. So if they see what we're doing and they see the process of the yin and yang and discussing and then walking out and coming to the next meeting and being, fine with it, I think that transparency piece is going to help our situation with the community.
Yep. Okay, Attorney Dodig, do you have any?
Thank you.
Dr. Atkins?
Just very brief, since Reverend Suarez was mentioned, I wanted to make you aware that I will be meeting with Reverend Suarez, Jim Nathan, and Mike Jackson. We're trying to work on a partnership with the NACE Association and really expand that partnership. And that is something that we have been working on for a while now. But we hope to hopefully bring the fruits of the labor before the board in the very, very near future, and that's so that we can do more for our students in our community, particularly those students where we have a great need. So they've been a great partner over the years, but we want to expand that. And this is something that we've involved Mr. Eady on. He has an idea for really a overall community-based initiative on the part of the school district, of which you take organizations such as the Nations Association or Quality of Life Center and work together in a more collaborative fashion in the best interests of our kids. So we'll be bringing more forward in the near future, but wanted to make you aware of that.
Great, that's good. Fantastic, thank you. So our next meeting is tonight at 6 o'clock. In the meantime, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What time is it?